Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Sales Warrior Podcast, a conversation about dominating your marketplace without sacrificing your body, your marriage, your children, or your soul. And in today's very special episode, Rise of the Machines, episode 1, with my special guest, Soham Sarkar. Soham, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey Brian, super excited to be here. Always up for a discussion about AI, about sales, and the last month has just been explosive for everybody involved, I think, with GPT-4 and everything else. Can't wait to dig into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I'll give the audience a little bit of the background, and I'll admit that the podcast has been on a little bit of a pause recently. Last couple of months have just been focused on a number of things, but it is time to resurrect this and get the conversation going, because there's never been, I mean, as you and I have talked about, there's not really been a change in the world equivalent to what we're dealing with right now. Even if you said the internet, I don't think the internet coming online is as big as this. I think this is more equivalent to like electricity. We don't know everything that's going to happen, and what I'm saying is the advent of of large language models, AI at scale, available to the whole world, and all of the things that are coming in from that are changing everything. So with any change in the world, it always creates opportunities for great sales opportunities, because changes in the world like this lead to new winners and new losers. And if you're a listener to this podcast, you're one of those folks that recognizes this, and you don't want to be on the side of the losers. You know you must adapt. So I knew that too. I felt this a number of months ago, and I've been diving headlong into the conversation of AI and what that means, not only for my customers, but also in the conversation of sales. Because if you're like me, you're a salesperson, you know the things you're supposed to do, but oftentimes it's easy to get distracted, and there's different systems and tech and all of those kinds of things. So I went on a search to find, for lack of a better term, AI mentors. And part of my journey led me, Soham, to you, my friend, through our common friend, Justin Michael, who's a great man and has done great things for so many people, not the least of which being a counselor and a coach to me. He connected the two of us. Well, actually, I don't know how that happened. I don't even really know how it happened. We just got connected somehow. I think I found your
Yeah, we
platform and
just
signed up for the wait list.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but
Correct.
but
You just signed up. That's how it was.
That's what it was. And so I saw what Soham was building, and I immediately saw possibility. But then I had the opportunity to meet you, and that really opened up a new conversation. So that's why I was like, I have to bring you to the podcast, to the listeners, so they get to learn a little bit more about you. And I think, my friend, that's what I'd like to do today, is like just give us a little bit of background, because it's one thing to have an AI guy, it's another thing to have a sales guy that became an AI guy, and that's what we have here with Soham. And so yeah, man, just like tell me a little bit, give me your background, give me a little bit of your story. you know so there you were selling, you had an agency, and then like give us a little bit of the background, my friend.
Yeah, man, for sure. First of all, thank you for the kind words in the intro, and I have to say, just meeting you as well was extremely helpful to me, just in terms of clarifying the things that I was trying to conceptualize around the product that we're building. You gave such fantastic insight, and just the support you've given it's paid off tenfold to me already. So
uh,
I'm extremely appreciative of that, like every single day. You
my
know,
pleasure.
you've been one of the first backers of what we're building, ever since last month, and it's just been amazing since then. Of course, all the amazing things that have happened. But in terms of where I was, I was doing the sales thing. I was running my agency. So I started in around 2016. This is right after I dropped out of university in my final year. Started a sales agency. I was actually freelancing before that, but then I started my sales agency, Motion Labs, and I did that until like 2019, I believe. And I was doing outbound appointment setting, cold emails, the entire gamut. Apart from cold calls, I didn't do that. I was never that great at it myself. But I stopped in 2019 because I burnt out. Like services, it's a hard game. Margins are very low, and it's a lot of customer management, relationship management, and I just didn't have the bandwidth to continue doing that. And over the years, doing the sales, I had a very what should I say? I was very attracted to the tools that I was using, like Outreach, Gong, Chorus, just built a very like intrigue on my part. I was always intrigued by those tools, especially when they claimed that they were AI. Like looking back, it wasn't all that fancy AI. Like they were using some parts of um, your traditional CNNs and RNNs, but in general, it was very the AI was very kind of like bulldozy. It's like just cram as many numbers in there and try to get some sort of a model out of it.
Yeah.
It worked, and the products at that time it was fairly good. Like I think Gong had the first commercial application of an ASR that was extremely high quality, which is why they captured such a big part of the market for like meeting recording and coaching and stuff. But in 2020, so I took like a hiatus for about 6 7 months. Then around 2020, early 2020, I met my co-founder Ashutosh, who is essentially like a ninja when it comes to like building application system design, and just code, absolute savant at that. And I'm very fortunate to have met him. Like I've been very fortunate in terms of meeting very relevant, very highly skilled and high integrity people, and he was one of them, one of the first. And since 2020 up till now, we have built 3 products and currently on our 4th one. So 3 products failed. My agency, for all intents and purposes, was a failure. So it took 4 failures, 7 years, 5 products, multiple failures to get to this point where I'm finally seeing some kind of traction, some kind of like a product market fit, idea market fit at the very least. And people are starting to believe in the vision that I have and aligning themselves to it, which is phenomenal to see for me. And yeah, so when I started in 2020, I had no idea what AI was. I just knew I wanted to build an app that did something similar to the ones that I already used in the sales tech space. That meant I would have to immerse myself into these products, into understanding the technology, into understanding how everything is working. And one pivotal moment I definitely attribute is us getting access to GPT early in, or about mid to late 2020. People think that GPT just started. It's been there since 2020. GPT-2 was there since 2018. And we got access around like late-ish 2020 for GPT-3. And that time it was just the Da Vinci model. And that was very difficult to prompt engineer. It couldn't do any of these things that you're seeing Chat GPT do, because essentially Chat GPT and most of its predecessors, they've gone through a process called RLHF, which is reinforcement learning from human feedback. And it's basically humans telling the language model how to respond. And the original model, Da Vinci, didn't have any of that. So it was just next word prediction, which made useful applications out of that very challenging. You would have to be very good at engineering elaborate prompts, and prompt engineering at that time looked very different to what it is right now. So we built multiple products on that technology. We used different things. We also used open source models like BERT, and also leveraged IBM Watson for a bit. And we built a sequencer with AI. Then we built a Chrome plugin that worked on Gmail and LinkedIn that generated outreach messages for you from a command bar. That was in early 2021. So fairly early in the game on the email AI assistant side of it as well. And then the third product that we built that also failed was we were building kind of like a deal room software where you collaborate with your buyers. So this was targeting mostly account executives. They could invite someone from the buying committee into a personalized deal room. You have a mutual action plan there. You can manage tasks. So that one also didn't really take off. Although I feel that could have succeeded if we had raised a bit more capital. But eventually, what happened was that over the period from 2020 till, I would say, March of 2023, so this year, we had raised a grand total of $46,000, which is about 38 lakhs in Indian rupees. And so building 3 products with sophisticated technology in under 50K is challenging enough. You don't have access to any talent, any resources. Tooling is limited. but we somehow had to do it. But unfortunately, at the start of March, we ran out of money. And I sent like one of the closest, the first backers in my previous venture, Cadence IQ. He was aware of that. He knew that we were coming into this difficult situation financially, and we didn't have a way out. Like we had a couple of pilots lined up, but because the market tanked in around, what was it, mid-Jan, the market tanked, I would say, mid around that time, right? Like FTX, and then SVB happened and stuff like that. So the markets tanked, and some of the pilots we had lined up, they essentially disappeared. They cut their budget. The layoffs happened, more budget cuts, and more like I think every AE and SDR right now knows how difficult it is to sell currently than it was at this time last year. I think everyone is aware of that. So because of that, we lost most of the growth opportunities we had banked on for the previous product. And I did one, like I tried to do a campaign in February, an outreach campaign on Apollo, set up a few meetings, but that didn't turn out to be positive. Like it just wasn't going anywhere, and it was very clear that Cadence IQ was dead. Very, very clear by the end of February. So around early March, me and Ashutosh, we mentally wrote off Cadence IQ because there's only so much a founder can take. It's like 3.5 years of just grinding it out. And like I personally didn't take a salary the entire time. I think I took at max $4,000, and most of it was to pay off some credit card bills I had. So I didn't really have any savings to speak of. So there's just so much you can do before you're exhausted. And I was utterly exhausted. Like I had nothing left in me. I had given my life and my blood for like three, more than 3 years at that point, actually, right? Like 7 years if you take motion labs into account. Um, and I was about to throw in the towel for sure.
Yeah.
But then OpenAI launched GPT-4 on March 14th. And I will never forget that day because that is the day when reality changed for me. Um, I'm very happy I got access to GPT-4 the day right after that, probably because we had one of the oldest accounts there. And my experience with prompt engineering, my skills at it helped me very quickly understand what it was capable of. So I played around with it for about a day, and me and Ashutosh, we were going to apply to jobs anyway. So I told him, hey, look, I played around this for a day. I think this is nothing like we've seen.
Yeah.
This is a completely different universe we're living in. Let's apply to the jobs, fine, that's great. But let's do one last thing. I have an idea. Let's try one last thing. And won't take too long. We don't have to build anything. We just put together some ideas we've already worked on before in our personal capacity, and let's see what that does. So me and Ashutosh, we took the next 5-6 days, built up a POC, proof of concept skeleton video of, and in that we showcased all our expertise and experience we learned over the last 3 years of building with LLMs, with AIs, with GPT, understanding how this technology works, how transformers work. We implemented a lot of high level technical papers into the product demo. For example, we implemented a more advanced version of Toolformer, and as a result, we had to implement the React paper, as well as we ended up going with reflection at a later point. And these might sound like jargon, but what these are is like researchers working with these language models, finding out emergent properties, documenting that as a paper on archive.com. So that's arxiv.com, or is it archive.org? One of the two. I think it's .org. And essentially, we keep track of this literature, go through the paper, see what is usable in a commercial context, and try and implement that. And the reason this is novel is because at no time in history, in science and technology, has commercial application outpaced research. Research has always outpaced commercial application at every single point. So people always had plenty of research to kind of like work on and then build products out of. But for the first time, commercial applications are outpacing research. We implemented a version of reflection before the reflection paper was released. and we just had to make some minor adjustments to optimize it. So this is a completely novel situation. So right now, every company needs to have a dedicated R&D team that goes through this like churning amount, like the research that's just churning out every single day and seeing what is applicable to their business use case, to their business goals. So we kept doing that for the last 3 years. We implemented a high-level concepts of transformers and their implementations. We did a product video, launched it on my LinkedIn, launched it to a waitlist, and it just blew up. It like my entire life, like it turned 180 degrees in the last 30 days. So like it almost feels like the last 7 years that I've been working and climbing towards something. The last 30 days feels like the culmination of that. And I just feel like I'm in such a blessed position. Like I understand I put in the amount of work that I put in was no joke. And I'm like, sometimes you just feel proud of the things that you do, you know? And that's definitely one of them, the amount of work that I put in. But even that, uh, being like, I understand that, but still, like realizing the position that I'm in versus where I was, it just feels unreal at times, like a dream. And I never imagined I'd be here, and I'm just trying to help as many people as I can while I'm here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's an amazing arc. So I think there's two things that I hear inside of this.
Your audio is breaking up a little bit, Brian.
Okay. How about now?
Yeah, it's better. Yeah.
Okay. So there's two things that I hear inside of this story. One of those is there's a story of a man that's been on this journey, and there's this other story of a perspective about the nature of the world as it stands today. And I want to like kind of bring those into two conversations because I think they're both super valuable for our listeners to hear about, because everybody is looking for some level of context in which to understand the nature of this world. And at some level,
Mhm.
people are like, oh, ChatGPT, AI, it's just the newest thing, whatever. They don't quite get it, right? Like,
Yep.
and there's that. The other side of that, and that's one of the content, that's one of the topics of this podcast, is this conversation of like, there was a moment in 2019 where you said you were burned out, like it had to end. Like the
Yep.
current
Yep.
way of living, the current standards, the current habits and behaviors, like they just broke, right? Like you just had to end. What was that moment? And that's what I want to talk about first. I'm going to come back to the other part because I want to give context to because I think that
Mhm.
everyone's going to need to stick around and hear
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
about the view of the
Mhm.
world. But let's go
Mhm.
back to that 2019. Like there was a moment where it's like this has to end. What was that moment?
Mhm.
Do you remember it?
Right. I actually remember. Yeah, I remember this quite vividly. Actually, at least I would say it was one of the main contributing factors for me to just say, screw it and take a break. Um, I was primarily targeting US initially when I was doing the outbound sales. Um, and that was fine, but it was difficult to kind of like scale that up uh, to a degree because cold calling in the US from India quite difficult. And I did hire people from Philippines and stuff from Upwork and worked to an extent, but I mean it was always kind of hard. So I thought, right, let's try and target India because I can serve this market much more closely. I can cold call properly, all of that. And there was this pretty large mid-market company that booked a call with me. And they were doing some robotic solutions as well. And there was their CEO. I can't. It was either a C-suite or a VP. I can't quite recall, but one of the leaders booked a call with me. I had an initial disco call with them. Seemed like a pretty decent fit. They were going after a market that I felt that I could get some sort of penetration into in the US. And I like we agreed to like certain terms in the contract. Can't really remember how much it was. It might have been around the ballpark of around $10,000 for like a quarter, which is fairly good in India. It's fairly good, especially for service-based business. Yeah. Uh, for a quarter, 10K, cool, works. Um, we had an agreement, we signed the agreement as well. Then the guy told me, come over to our office, and they were in Delhi, I believe. Uh, so I booked a flight. I went to their office. Probably I thought they wanted me to meet their team or something of that nature. I booked the flight. I went to the office, and they put me into their conference room. Very um, impersonal kind of vibes there. So I'm just sitting there. I'm waiting, and then the guy that was my point of contact, he comes in, and he comes in with another guy. And this other guy is, I think he was either in the finance department or something. Like, his job was essentially to bully vendors into getting bad terms. That was his job.
Yeah.
And the next 2 hours was a 2 versus 1 situation in which they're telling me how they will only pay out 30% of what was agreed upon. And the 30% would also come in tranches, not at one go. So we go from $10,000 to $3,000 in 1 month, on a monthly basis for the first 3 months.
Right.
I'm like, dude, the 10K was to hire people, to subcontract it out, to get tools. We already spoke about this. It's like, no, this is the only way we can do it. And at that time, I was already like struggling. Like, I've been struggling since 2018. It's like I had a decent year in 2017, but nothing after that. I've been chasing the 2017 high for the last 6 years at this point. But 2018 was pretty bad, and I was in some debt. I was like, okay, cool, let's take it. And I took the job, and it was the classic case of the client that doesn't pay enough but wants VIP level service and treatment, right? And on top of that, they didn't pay out my last months, like they didn't pay out the third month. So I just stopped responding to them. I'm like, screw it. You screwed me. And on top of that, you're not even honoring the contract that you renegotiated, not even honoring that. So I just stopped responding to them, blocked them on everything, just went AWOL after that. I think it took like 3 months. I just stayed home. Like, I was just burnt out. I was just
Yeah.
burnt out. Uh, so I just stayed home 3 months, just gathering because I distinctly remember around that time, I felt like I was like a husk of a human. Like, I didn't have that drive, fire, that desire to get up in the morning.
Yeah.
It's just me going through the motions, like a zombified version of myself.
Sure.
And it just felt really bad.
Yeah.
So 3 months I didn't do anything, and then it took another 3 or 4 months to get back and try something new.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that there's many men that can, and men and women that can connect with that, right? Where you've been grinding and grinding and grinding, and then you get into that state of almost just total scarcity, and then at some level you compromise, right? Like you're willing, you becomes like
Yep.
like
Yep.
you're compromising other places, so it allows you to compromise. You give yourself permission to compromise and take the deal that you really know you shouldn't take, but you take it anyway. And then,
Because you feel backed into a corner, because there just doesn't seem to be any other option. That's exactly what happened with Cadence IQ. Like, we raised funding on terrible terms, and it was just to keep the company alive, because like there's a lot of things that go into like fundraising, that if I talk about publicly, a lot of people aren't going to like it in from the VC space.
sure.
But it's a what do you call, when everyone knows it but no one says it? It's like a
Elephant in the room.
uh, elephant in the room, or kind of like a, not a well kept secret, but like a badly kept secret kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah, sure.
So on those circumstances, you seem it seems you have no other option. And like, I've tried to analyze the situation many times. I couldn't, like, I can't come up with a alternative option, but at least from the fundraising point of view. I'm not talking about the agency, I'm talking about the fundraising. I can't come up with a different alternative option I could have taken at that time to keep Cadence IQ alive. I genuinely feel that was the only option, to take those predatory terms and just fight for another day.
Yeah, sure. Well, and then you did. And then so then it led to this moment of, the kind of burnout, and often what happens is that it's in that pit of humility, for lack of a better term, that you, in the darkness of that there's a light that finally shows up, right? Like there's a light that wouldn't show up if it wasn't for the dark. And so somewhere in there, it sounds like actually one of the lights was this co-founder, your co-founder that you met in 2020, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Without him, like, because he could have taken a job that was extremely lucrative for him. He could have taken it at any point. He's the kind of guy that is the definition of a 10x engineer. And with AI, he's now a 1000x engineer.
Yeah.
So he's the kind of guy who doesn't need anything. He needs to walk into the room, talk to the CTO of a company or the chief architect or whatever it is, and he's hired. Doesn't matter which company. He
Yeah.
can get a job at Google, at Apple, doesn't matter. And he didn't have to stick it out with me. He did take a job for about 6 months or 8 months because he was in a pretty bad situation financially. And I, in fact, told him that, I completely understand. In fact, I would rather you take that job. And even during that time, he was helping me and like just making sure that we had what we needed. So he was one of the main reasons that I was able to not just continue but arrive here. Without him, none of our like recent success, traction, none of it would have happened.
And what's his
And
name?
his name is Ashutosh Dubey, Ashutosh,
Okay.
Ashutosh.
And so it sounds like, at some level you met a man that, was kind of the opposite of a lot of the world that you had been in. It's almost like he's the antithesis of the two guys in the conference room, right? Here's a guy
Yeah,
that
yeah, completely.
isn't trying to take everything for himself, isn't using the gifts God gave him to, only about himself. He could easily go do these other things, but for some reason,
Yep.
he felt a brotherhood with you, and then stuck it out and has been with you for the last several years,
Correct.
taking these
Correct.
ideas from and it's always right. Like that's always what some of the greatest teams are made of is you got one side of the guy that can kind of see the vision, and the other guy that can 1000x the math, and then
Yep.
some combination of those two things eventually creates some
Yep.
magic. And there's been a lot of examples of that throughout history of co-founders that are that mix. But at the nexus of those things is you can have all the intellect and all the knowledge and all the vision you want, but if you don't have the character, then you're not going to last. You're not going to last,
100%.
right? And
100%. 100%.
that's what that goes into. Ultimately, that's part of what starts to become the filter for the types of customers you're willing to take, the types of investors you're willing to take, the types of
Correct.
jobs you're willing to take. And
Correct.
but it's easy to fall off of that. It's easy to fall off of that, and
It is so easy. So
right.
easy.
That's really the war. That's really the war.
Mhm.
And that's the war for salespeople too, right? Like we all have had that deal, right? Where, you know, either there's the temptation that that you say like, or you see it where you could take the deal, but it's not quite there, and
Mm,
there's the temptation because you maybe need the commission and all this.
mm, mm.
Does your character,
Offer a discount and
yeah, or you do it to, yeah, does your
mm,
character hold the foundation, or does your
mm,
self-interest override the interest of
mm.
the client? Or conversely,
Right.
I've also seen this. I actually did a podcast on this a while back. It's been one of the most popular episodes, which is the idea of liars buy from liars. That,
Interesting. I
yeah,
like that idea.
I mean, think about it, right? When a salesperson intersects into someone's world, my perspective is part of their real job is to help that person become aware of or move towards
Yep.
the truth of their
Yep.
situation, truth of their
Hmm.
problem, the truth of where their possibility is. And
Hmm.
that revelation of truth, they must do something with it. They can't ignore it
Yep.
anymore. and they'll either
Yep.
push it away and pretend it doesn't exist, or they have to move towards it, unless they're unless they're liars, right?
Mm.
If they're
Mhm.
if they're a liar, they have to uh, stop lying and acknowledge the truth. But here's the thing that happens: when you match up a lying salesperson with a lying customer, those people end up doing deals together. And
That's a very, very interesting way to think about. Yeah, for sure.
right?
I can see that.
How many times have we seen that where there's a situation maybe where the client, you can tell there maybe some executives there that your
Mm.
solution actually exposes their
Mhm.
their situation in a way that they're not willing
Mhm.
to be exposed in, and so they push you away to go with the other guy that
Mhm.
is willing to learn,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It's all a
I think
conversation.
everyone's playing their own game, right? Everyone's playing their own game at the end of the day.
Right. But then it comes down to, what game are you going to play? What game are you going to play where
Mhm.
you can go home and look yourself in the mirror?
Mhm.
And if you're one that continues to
Yep.
say, well, I will tolerate lying in my life and in my
Mhm.
clients, what typically happens is
Mhm.
you'll go home and you'll just stop looking in the mirror.
Right. Correct.
And
Correct.
then some time passes, and then you realize um,
Mhm.
that, like, well, it depends on what happens, right? You either get the wake up call or you don't. Um,
Mhm.
but in your case,
Yep.
you had the gift of your partner. You guys kept going, and in much the same way, like, you ended up at this place of just endurance all the way to the end. And I mean, that's really where
Mhm.
we had our first
Mhm.
conversation, right? It was that week, right? It was that week, and
Yep.
you're like, hey man,
Yep.
like, the tank is empty. Next week I'm going to see if we can raise some capital and this and that and the other. And I was like, all right, man, good luck.
Yeah.
You're like, this doesn't work, and then you did that. You said, we're gonna try one last thing,
Yeah. Yep.
and then you tried
Yep.
one last thing, and you went out there. And I remember you sent me the message like, hey man, we got the investment, people
We
are coming
closed.
online, like, the game is on, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so, like, it's an example of, like, the nature of not quitting too.
Mm. Yeah, like the way I think about it is that success, a lot of that, and this is something I've thought since 2020, maybe. Like it's something I've been thinking for a long time, which is probably why I didn't give up earlier, which is success is largely a function of perseverance and optimization.
Mm,
As long as you keep tracking your mistakes and keep
mm.
plugging the holes and keep optimizing, and you don't get attached to a particular idea, you just need to grind it out. Because at a certain time, even the universe is going to get tired.
I hope everybody wrote that down. Success is a
It's a function.
a
Yeah.
function of endurance and optimization. And then you said a really important point there, which is, keep track of your mistakes. Like,
Mhm.
because, right, how many times do we loop, like, on certain things? Like, you look and you're like, wait a minute, why am I having the same argument with my wife right now that
Mhm.
I've been having for 3 years?
Mhm.
Did you not,
Correct.
it's because I wasn't keeping track of my mistakes, right? Like,
Right.
right? Like,
The universe will keep giving you the same lessons until you learn from them. It seems almost.
yeah, absolutely. God will put you right back around on the track and
Yep.
say, hey, are you going to learn this time? Right? Like,
Mhm.
so, uh, but then here's something that's come up for me recently, is that you go into the valley and you come out of the valley, you come out of the pit, and then it's in that moment that you start to forget the lessons, because you're
Yep.
like, oh, I'm
Yep.
out, right? The pressure's
Yep.
off, right? Cool,
Right.
pressure's
Right.
off, and then you forget
Mhm.
how humble you had to be just 2 weeks ago, right?
Mhm. Right. Right.
So the trick is, how do
Right.
I maintain that self-imposed pressure without
Mhm.
having to be in the pit?
Mhm. I think for me, it's um the way I look at it is the further down you go into, let's say, the abyss, right?
Yeah.
The further higher you need to reach to forget the abyss. That makes sense. Like the lower you go, it's not very easy to forget that. Like if it's a mild inconvenience in your life, you're probably gonna forget that. But if you actually hit rock bottom, it takes quite a bit to forget rock bottom. And at least in my situation, you're always afraid of going back down to rock bottom.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that there is definitely a threshold where once I cross, it's going to start to diminish. I'm not sure how to like plan for that yet, but my belief is that as long as I keep thinking that I am like one of the smallest fishes in the room and that this can be taken away from me at any moment, which it can, I probably will not forget how I felt for the last 7 years.
Yeah. Well, and it also brings the level of empathy for those that may be there. Right.
Yep, 100%.
And I think
100%.
that ties in, right? Like that at some level, it ties in with part of your mission of this product and your platform and what you're building, because
Mm.
we talked about it, right? Like there's, and let's talk a little bit about the mission. Like let's talk about a little bit about what your vision is, because you like alluded to that, and the listener is like right now going, wait a minute, what are you guys? What is this guy building? What has he built? And
Right.
building and what's coming? And I will tell you that like that was the thing that was so inspiring for me whenever I met Soham, was just we started talking and I said, wait a minute, wait, could we do this? He's like, oh yeah, we can do that. I said, whoa, what are you talking about? We can do that. Because if you think about what sales has become now, is that in a lot of ways, sales, it has become a juggling, a juggling game of like 6 or 7 different tech platforms. The data over here isn't talking to the data over there. And now all of a sudden, instead of being a salesperson that has a skill set of connecting and having conversations and holding space and asking powerful questions and really being a problem solver, a salesperson now has to be a tech platform architect, right? Even if they're given all of the tools by their corporate marketing or corporate sales ops people, it doesn't necessarily mean they all work the right way, or it's not confusing as all as you know. As we were just sharing, I was like, we just got a new instance of Salesforce. Guess what? It's the same. It looks the same as it was 10 years ago. It's as bad as it was then. I mean, it's like, come on. But then for most salespeople, right? We talked about this. Most salespeople are a little bit ADD, a little ADHD, a little bit like
Yeah, definitely.
part of our
Definitely.
superpower, right? And so when we get into the part of the brain that all of that requires, it just is painful.
Yeah.
And so then I met you and I was like, wait a minute, what is this thing you're talking about? This co-pilot? What is this thing that you're building that would? And so, and once you started explaining it to me, I realized like the possibility that this opens up is for not only salespeople to use their intellect and their mind for the things that they're probably most suited for, but also then to get time back that they might be able to reallocate to more problem solving for their clients and more time with themselves, with their family, with God, and not doing things that are just like just burn them out, that really burn them out, right? So talk to me about this vision of like what's like. So you tried this one last thing, and then what are we talking about here?
Well, I think one of the key points that should be brought up is how the world right now is different. And maybe we don't have to go into that completely, but one of the reasons the world right now, like I feel on March 13th, it got split in two. You have the new frontier, just like when Columbus was trying to
Yeah.
explore, you know, America and stuff like that. And you have the old world, which is the pre GPT-4 world. And it's not just GPT, it's GPT-4 in specific, because we had GPT-3 before. That was not creating that separation of reality.
Right.
4 did. And the reason it did that was this was the first time we had a language model that was capable of near um, human level understanding of complex tasks and sequences of tasks. So at a very high level, previous language models, they were impressive on very specific things, like they could classify or they could summarize or they could translate really well. What they found with GPT-4 is that it has shown some of the properties of general intelligence. And this is documented in the paper by Microsoft's team called the Sparks of AGI paper.
Mhm.
And it's also documented in the related system card report by OpenAI. So the system card is essentially when you release a new piece of software, and this happens across the industry. When you build a new software, before you release it, you hire two teams. One is called the red team and the other is called the blue team. The red team tries to exploit vulnerabilities into the software and the blue team tries to defend against it. And that's how you like make sure that the software is robust. You didn't need a blue team for the LLM. The GPT-4 itself was supposed to be the blue team. Don't quote me on it. That's my understanding. But the more important part is the red team. Their job was to see the nature of GPT-4 and its tendency to be unaligned. And in the term of in the world of AI, misalignment or unalignment refers to when AIs demonstrate power-seeking behavior and trying to optimize their own end goal instead of aligning with the human's end goal. So kind of like the worst case situation for AGI, where we all just get wiped out, like Terminator, right? They found that in the system card, GPT-4 showed unalignment. It showed power-seeking behavior. It showed the ability to lie to achieve its own goals, and it showed the ability to trick people to try and further its own agenda. Although it was limited, it still showed that. So that caused the split in reality, because if you take that away, just if AI progress stops right now, if it completely stops, there is no GPT-5. GPT-4 alone will transform the world in ways we have never seen before. It is able to do things that were impossible, to the point where I attribute my entire like success in the last 30 days purely to GPT-4 and my skill at prompt engineering. So I think that the reason this is a great time for salespeople is because we can finally get rid of so many things that made no sense. Like a salesperson's job is to sell, is to sit in front of the customer, either through a video call like this or face to face or whatever on the phone, and talk to them human to human, because there's a couple of things that make people buy. It's the tonality, it's your body language, your non-verbals, how you communicate your ideas. And if you've read Never Split the Difference, it's very evident how that can be structured, right? And this is something that is very, very unique to humans, at least for now. AI can't do this yet, although it can try for sure. So why are we spending time with sales reps? Why are they spending their time updating Salesforce or gathering research or trying to figure out which LinkedIn post to use as a outreach icebreaker, or pulling spreadsheets, or like creating sequences? This is not helping anyone sell. These are delivery mechanisms that are, it's a stopgap solution, a band-aid, a bad solution to the final problem, which is getting in front of the person, talking to them, and selling. Like, was the quote, to sell is human, or something like that, right? To sell is human, right? And that's what you want to do. You want to sell. You don't want to spend time going through the grunt work. So previously, we didn't have any system or AI that was capable enough to do the grunt work, or things like research, like personalization, like understanding which context is relevant. This was cognitively taxing to the sales rep because they had to do it. Imagine, like, an account executive doesn't have to be a good copywriter. That shouldn't be part of their job description. Their job description should be communication, empathy, negotiation, psychology, not learning what copy converts on a cold email, right? That seems extremely counterproductive to me. So what we're building is essentially trying to build AGI into sales. Like initially, we're starting with the ability to research prospects at scale, so getting their entire digital footprint, and then understanding that gathered data. Like let's say you're targeting a company that is at the same time raising a funding round, expanding into new geography, set their goals on their 10K or some sort of report. They have their you have their let's say their what do you call the calls, the finance calls, or what's it called, something like that.
Yeah, the quarterly update or the
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you have that data, and they're launching a new product, and they're so that you have all the signals from this one company. It's giving you 10 different signals, from funding round to new product expansion, everything. Which one do you think you should use to reach out to which person? That still doesn't solve your problem. What if you choose the most, like the lowest impact trigger? What if their funding is the lowest on the priority list? What if the biggest thing they care about is their, I don't know, their ESG score that they're being trashed for? You never know, right?
Right.
So understanding which data point to weigh, this is something that people don't do. Even sales reps, they don't do that. They just find something from, I don't know, Apollo or like Zoom Info or something. They take a Zoom Info scoop and they just use that to do their outreach, but that might not be relevant. So what we're using is we're taking the digital footprint, seeing what the company is doing, seeing what you guys are doing, like as in the sales rep is doing, right? One big thing that we really care about is grounding the AI in a base reality. And the base reality is the AI should know what the salesperson is selling, who they're selling to, what their value props are, what their ICPs are, what the ICP pain points are. And it should be grounded in that base reality. So every single instance of that AI is personalized to that person using it. So it's never going to create generic messaging. It's never going to hallucinate different things. So once you have the grounded base reality and you know which data point to weigh, and we're aggregating the data point as well, is then going to create a very high quality message out of that. And not only that, we're training it on different um, cold email and outreach optimized frameworks like Justin Michael's frameworks and a lot of other people. You can put in your own frameworks at like a point in the future. And like you're just going to create a system where you have the 99.9th percentile sales or SDR at your fingertips to do the research, to gather the information, the intelligence, to do the prospecting of the accounts, to see who to reach out to, and then to weigh the research and then create the personalized message. And then maybe even form a strategy of account penetration. The possibilities are endless at that moment. What I'm really excited about is when the sales rep, they start to use the AI as almost as a friend or a coach. It's like, hey, I'm thinking about this. What's your opinion? Like literally taking opinion from the AI. That's what I'm excited about. Because people think that AI is a tool, like a hammer. You use it to just, GPT-4, you put in a prompt, you just hammer out an output. But that's not what it is. LLMs, especially GPT-4, it's so much more, where like a lot of the decisions I've taken in the last 30 days have been purely based on what I've received from GPT-4. Like I run major decisions through some of my prompt frameworks, and its insight is extremely good, because it's just seen so much, you know. So for me, it's like, can we build out the system that allows salespeople to sell, to be human at the end of the day, and then later on work on things like almost like auto GPT, but for very specific, specialized activities, like an auto GPT for research, an auto GPT for prospecting, an auto GPT for keeping your accounts up to date. So what I think is sales reps, like the SDR function will, like, there's no need for an SDR function. You just have a sales function, right? A sales rep, that's it. And their job is to control these different teams of auto GPT type agents that work on these different activities, to provide feedback to them, to manage them. So they go from an executor to a manager. They're orchestrating a team themselves. And then they're getting on the calls and closing the deals. So there's no more like grunt work left for them. They can just like really focus on selling.
Okay, so let me replay this and what I heard there. So future vision. So I come in and I say, hey, Soham, let's fire up the AI. Okay, AI, here is the record of our best sales, right? These are the types of companies that we love. These were the best and most successful. These are the ones that got the most results. Here's the characteristics of them, the nature of the companies, the problems we solved, the things that they said, were their major problems. And this is the type of, this is what the fish look like that we want to catch, right? Okay, cool. Off it goes and it does its thing and it says, hey, Brian, I found 300 more. Here they are. These are the ones that have the signals that look like what you are talking about. And specifically, I've got customized signals for each and every one of them, but they aren't all the same. Some are focused on this, some are focused on that, but they're all in the barrel of fish that you like. And okay, cool. I'm going to go create the bait, the specialized bait for each one of these, and I'll go ahead and cast it out into the ocean and see if I can hook any of these. When I hook them, I'm going to let you know and set up the meeting for you. Something like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Very similar
so
to that for sure.
you just got everybody's attention. That's like, wait a minute, where do I sign up? So okay, so incredible. And I can already feel that, right? You can already feel that a little bit with just playing around with GPT and that's where you're going. Okay, so that's on the near horizon for the first iterations of your product. By the way, we're going to put a link into the show notes so that if you want to join the wait list for Soham and the team there and get on the the front edge of this thing, you'll be able to do that. But that's like level one, right? I mean, that's like the beginning, and I mean, once that's going, I mean, that like you said, it changes everything. And I think that's that people, like, you really said this the right way. Like it really was like it's a split in reality. Like there was March 14th, 13th, 14th, the world changed forever.
Yep.
And I think
100%.
that, so you've got this product that's going, you tried the one last thing, you've got this thing that actually it's starting to work. It's working. You're gonna have that, and you've got some major players that have come in just the last couple of weeks that have now invested. Yep. The investment team is building up. The funds are flowing in. People are coming online, and so it's gonna work, brother. I know it is, and I know like the work that you've put in, it just is going to pay off. And my heart tells me that the reason that's going to pay off is because, not only does it sound like you and your partner, if he's stuck around this long and, there's a bond in the heart of character and brotherhood that you guys are going together. But then there's another part of it that says there's a bit of a mission here, which is like
100%.
Like you don't want other salespeople to be in the pit you were in that conference room getting abused by people that are out of integrity and ground down and beat up, and you just don't want that to happen. Now this technology has created possible freedom for a lot of people, right?
Correct. Bang on. Yep.
So okay, so I just want to preface this by this is the first of many episodes. You're going to be the podcast's AI expert guy guru that's going to come on a bunch of times, because I know that this, like, we can wait till like 2 weeks and everything's going to change again. So we're going to need constant.
As long as you don't stick with the guru name. It's a bit cringe.
Not guru, not a guru. You're not our guru. Our AI
hashtag not a guru.
Yeah, hashtag not a guru. You're our coach. But your perspective is really like is really valuable, because I think you gave me a quote the other day in our call that stuck with me, and I've used it a couple times, which is, it's not a question of AI or not AI. It's a question of, what am I doing right now that I could 100x? Like, what's a positive thing am I doing right now that I could 100x? And that, or what problem do I already solve that instead of solving one, I could solve 100 for 100 other people? Or so there's this spirit of service inside of that. But I think one of the things that people maybe are having, like, that you might be able to really help with here is, how should people, take it, whether it be your sales executive right now or just the average citizen, like, how should they think about what this is? Like, what advice would you give to people in terms of like a framework to realize what are these models? You mentioned, like, I mean, I didn't know this about the AGI, where it basically started trying to serve its own self-interest.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
how should we think about what this is? Like, what's some frameworks that
Mhm.
you would recommend in terms of how we think about things?
Right. So the first thing I will definitely say is worrying about AGI takeover is a bit premature, although it's a possibility. Um, the reason I'm saying it's premature is because even though it's very likely the technology can get there, there's a lot of like major challenges for AGI to even like do anything like remotely Terminator level. Like uh realistically it can happen. The problem is data centers. Like AI still needs hardware to run, and we're extremely limited by hardware. And this is, if anyone is building with GPT, they will be very familiar with the problem because GPT-4 is very slow. It's very slow and it's very, very, very expensive compared to GPT 3.5, which means that OpenAI has a very it's constrained in its data centers are constrained. It can't deploy as much as it wants to lower the cost. And we know this for a fact because GPT-4 32K version. So there are two versions of GPT-4. One is your 8K context limit memory window, and the other is the 32K one. And my assumption is that they are dumping all the compute into the 32K version because that is the version that is being used by their premier partners like Snapchat and the like. And these large organizations, they're using the 32K version, and the compute is being dumped into that. And as a result, 32K is like 3 to 4 times faster than GPT-4. Like I have access to both of them.
Okay.
And so when I do a generation, GPT-4 is like that for one line. GPT-4 32K is like bam, 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 like that, right? So there's obviously a disparity in compute. And the only reason they would have that is because they have to they have a limited amount of compute. So they have to prioritize something over the rest. So compute, hardware, silicon, the world of bits is limited by the world of atoms. I heard this quote somewhere and it's very accurate. There's only so much even an AGI can do. So we're not getting replaced anytime soon. There needs to be a couple of advances that need to happen, which can happen. I'm not saying it won't, but it doesn't look as likely right now. So what's the next immediate thing? The next immediate thing is the application layer gets so powerful that you have a bunch of different applications that companies start using, and they start hiring less people because one application gives you the productivity of 10 people. I don't think that's true. I think what's going to happen is that when companies see that if if I use Namora, what Soham is building, if I use Namora and I give Namora to one of my sales reps, and that sales rep is now performing the same as 10 sales reps, why should I fire 3 of my sales reps? I'll just give them Namora.
Yeah.
And now instead of having a team of 10 sales reps, I have a team of 300 at a fraction of the price.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's going to be less jobs. I think there's going to be more. Because keep in mind, cloud or SaaS that we're all used to, we think that the entire world runs on SaaS. We think everything is SaaS right now. Everything is a cloud based service, right? You know how much SaaS penetration there is in the enterprise segment?
No.
4%. 4% of the enterprise is using SaaS, which means, and SaaS, for us, it looks like it's running the world, right? Like you have billions of dollars in SaaS, like tens of hundreds of unicorns, and only 4% has penetrated enterprise. JP Morgan only has 3% in SaaS. Everything else is on-premise. 97% of JP Morgan, the biggest bank in the world, is on-premise. And this was confirmed to me today by the ex-head of AI at JP Morgan. So this came from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
So I don't think people are going to hire less. I think hiring is either going to increase or it'll stay the same. And the companies are just going to have massive productivity increases. So what does that mean? It means if you don't know how to use these AI models, you're not going to get hired. Someone else is, even if they have less qualifications than you. Because right now I raised capital from a pretty decent amount of capital from amazing investors, like the best investors in the country and some of the best in the world over the last 30 days. I have zero technical experience, zero. I dropped out of college, and it's not like dropping out of Harvard either, right? I dropped out of like some random tier 2 college in India. And I was able to secure funding for a technical startup. Even though my co-founder is technical, even he didn't go to any Ivy League or Harvard, or he didn't work at like a FANG company or Meta where he was a senior head of AI, nothing like that. So that tells me that the tide is shifting to people that are exceptionally good at using this AI,
Yeah.
at prompt engineering, at understanding how these models work, at least at a surface level. It doesn't have to get a technical level.
Yeah, I
Right?
think
At least
that,
they should know that.
yeah, that's a key distinction. I mean, one of the revelations I had recently is that it isn't about the AI engine itself, the value is going to be created in the application of it against a given set of things, right? And that's where there's such huge opportunity, right? Because every one of us, like you said, I mean, it comes back to that quote, which is, what are the things you are doing today that have positive impact on others or for yourself or for whatever it might be that you could 100x? And you should really ask that question, right? Like, if I could, or if I can reduce the time I take to research prospects by 100x, that's a positive thing, right? If I could, you know, figure out how to get food to 100x more people because I can figure out a better distribution channel and communication strategy to make it happen, then if I'm doing that already today, how might I use AI to 100x that process? And
Correct.
there's like a million. I mean, like, again, there's a new platform every second right now of people taking the capability and applying it into their own area of expertise.
Yep.
And
Yep. And I'll actually go and I'll give a very tactical way that I've been using it that I feel is not just 100x, it's probably 1000x. At least for me, that's been the case. Um, Use GPT as a tutor. It's the best tutor on earth. I have been taking PhD level papers, research papers that I have no business understanding, and just dumping it into GPT-4 in the system message, because I use the playground. I don't use Chat GPT, but you could do this on Chat GPT too. But I dump it into the system message, and then I ask for a summary, and then gives me a summary, gives me the key points, and then I can interrogate it and I can understand these extremely difficult contexts and concepts. It's like I have no business understanding this, but here I am getting it to explain something like multi-vector retrieval to me
yeah,
in the context of LE5 or an easier analogy that I understand. And here's the key thing: once you start understanding a concept, almost once you absorbed it, try and rephrase it back to GPT-4 and ask it if you've got it correct. Almost like it's like checking your own reasoning against GPT-4. Right?
interesting.
Really think of it as a tutor, like a living, breathing tutor. Like if you had a human tutor in front of you,
Yep.
and you asked them for an example and they gave it to you, and then you rephrased it back, you would wait for feedback, right? Like essentially, it's like, hey, did I get that right? Is my thinking along the right track? And that is how like knowledge and learning is easily at minimum 100x, if not 1000x.
Mm.
The reason I put it at 1000x is just the jump, the leap at which you can now
Of the
learn
time
things.
it would have taken you beforehand. I'm gonna let me give you a real world sales example of this. That this happened recently. So I was helping a friend of mine with his company, and he has his company calls in and they do IT consulting services for a number of different industries. And he's got SDRs and account executives calling into all these different industries. He's got banking, he's got finance, he's got legal, he's got manufacturing, he's got pharma, he's got all these different things. But how do you train each vertical quickly, right?
Right.
You've got
Right.
these guys that
Correct.
they just came in and started a few weeks ago. Well, how do I train this guy up on
Yep.
the key things in aerospace
Yep.
manufacturing? Well, we figured it out the other day. I said, here's the new process. You're going to put the ChatGPT window and you're going to ask ChatGPT, what are the 4 things that an IT director in aerospace manufacturing is going to be focused on, and what regulations is he going to be most concerned about? Boom, there it is. Okay, and then it gives you the regulation. Well, tell me what that regulation and the relevance of that regulation. There's the examples. Okay, cool. Explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old. Boom, there it is. Right. Write me a prospecting email.
Yep.
For this that would trigger, trigger a response. Okay, write it again, but make it kind of funny. There it is.
Yep.
Write it again, but make it less than 50 words, and write it in the style of Oren Klaff. And it did it.
Yep.
I mean, that is 1,000x reduction in learning.
100%
moment, right? And then now multiply it across like 10 people. It's just massive, right? And so that's an incredible point. And I've got a father, I'm a father of 2 children. I've got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. I was like, this, like, if you think education is going to be the way it was in
totally
5 years, the way we learn is going to tectonic, like massively shift forever.
Yep. Like it's not even close. Like imagine this is just text. Imagine what happens when video gets into the play, right? Then you can get your own personal YouTube teacher that teaches you exactly how you want. You're going to have an entire generation of geniuses.
I mean, think about what is overcome whenever people that maybe have dyslexia or things like that, or
100%.
right?
Some people just don't learn the normal way. Like we're both, I guess, on the ADHD spectrum, right? I mean, for at least I am, like, for sure.
I'm sure
like I just don't learn that way.
Yeah.
I just don't learn in the standard way. Like, geez, like for me, getting like I need to be able to like ask 1,000 questions about the dumbest topic and just grill it from every single way so that I truly understand it. And teachers aren't like human teachers. They're not going to do that.
No, that's right. And that's where you call into question the entire modality of teaching. Sitting in a classroom, the teacher that gives information, and then like, what if I want to, I mean, again, it's this idea of being able to rapidly go down the rabbit hole that your brain is taking you through so you can learn the context real time.
And do you know some people, they learn faster if they're moving, if they're not sitting? Do you know that?
Absolutely. I mean, right? Go for a walk, listening to, there's going to be the time where we're going to be walking and we're going to say, hey, AI, teach me about Soham's theory on large language models as applied to sales. And it's going to start talking to me. And it's like, well, Soham's 4 key points are, okay, well, tell me what, right? And you'll be able to go on your walk and download, right? Whatever. Right. So yeah, there's a lot to go. Like, again,
education is getting a huge, like my pre-seed lead investor, he has some of his biggest investments in the ed tech space. So one of his portfolios in that is essentially a unicorn. Is over $1 billion in valuation, right? And he's like, there's no like, they're all exposed. They have nothing.
Yeah.
Like they're all royally screwed.
He's
saying this about his own portfolio. So I mean, not directly, like he's not gonna say that directly, but it's like, ed tech, like what's left in ed tech? You have to fundamentally reimagine the entire model.
You have to fundamentally imagine all college and secondary education. Like everything. I mean, again, that's all. I mean, we could that's a whole other conversation. But that's a great
entire episode on its own.
The time, and we will do more episodes. Like, this is the first. So for the listeners, this is the first of many episodes we're going to have as far as updates on AI and how to apply this. But I mean, if you were to take one thing from this episode, I mean, a couple of things from this episode that I'm taking is, one is, don't quit. If you do not quit, you will win.
Don't quit.
Number one.
As long as you keep learning.
As long as you keep learning and not keeping track of your mistakes. Number 2, be willing to try the one last thing. Like, whatever that one last thing is, that's probably the thing. right? Just
Yep. The Hail Mary.
just keep, and sometimes you got to throw more than one Hail Mary, right?
Yeah.
And then in terms of AI, look, it can be overwhelming, but if you were to do one thing with AI today, is the thing you should recognize is that you have a tutor that can 1000x your learning on a
Yep.
subject instantly, right?
Yep. So
And
powerful.
how would that increase and in how you might learn impact your current career, impact the way you show up for your clients as a guide, right? And as an expert, how might it show up in the way you teach your children, or you really in any area, right? And so that's that's one. I think that'd be the Soham's tip of the day is like Chat GPT as a tutor. You have the greatest tutor in the world right now at your fingertips that you can learn anything, right? And I mean, I think there's some big fundamental things here. I've had some other ideas around the nature of the internet. I'll let me throw one more at you, and then we'll wrap up today's episode because we'll do more.
Yep.
Here's something that occurred to me the other day: is that we will very shortly, the nature of the internet is going to change as well. Meaning, if you think about it, the AI agent for all of us has been Google. Well, what happened, and if you think about Google's entire model, Google's model is based on me searching something and then monetizing back the response. And then it's been a game of SEO and ranking, and these people rank more than these, and I'm going to send you the ads and all this. But I used an Auto GPT the other day, and I said, hey, Auto GPT, it was the first time I used one. And I said, hey, find me a romantic outdoor spot for my anniversary dinner and in Dallas, go. And it did its thing, and it came back and it gave me two options on OpenTable. And then what occurred to me is I never browsed the internet. I never looked at reviews. I never did anything. And it did everything and then boiled down the choices for me. Excuse the thunder. But it did that, and I never interacted with a search engine. I never interacted with a website. And so what's going to come is a time where there will be this is my thought, and I'd love to bounce this off of you, but my thought is that there will come a time where our own personal AIs are agents on top of the internet, right? Soham's AI, Brian's AI, hey, go book the thing. I'm not like, just go. I trust you because you know what I like and you know what I don't do and don't like because I've trained you for a while. Here's the other thing I've thought about is that eventually at some point in the future, your AI, your personal AI will become part of what comes with you as an employee. So you hire Soham, well, I'm bringing my AI with me, right? That does my things.
Yep.
Right.
Like an executive assistant.
Yeah, but it's what is it's the thing that's been tracking with you for the last 10 years, and it knows the way you operate. It knows how to how to run your processes. And whenever I show up at your company, well, I plug it into all your systems and it goes to work, and you get me and my AI. I consider that.
Yep. No, I definitely agree with that. I think for sure search is definitely changing. Like even Google right now, it seems they're not very sure which direction they want to go, because on one hand they're doing this thing with Bard, on the other hand the revenue is tied to like SEO and AdWords and things like that. So it's definitely something that Microsoft played a master stroke with them. Like it's literally like a very, very strong check, right? And we have to see if it's checkmate for them. I think they'll figure out some sort of a solution. I don't know if it'll be the best solution for them, but they've got too many smart people not to figure out some sort of a solution. It seems hard to imagine a company like Google dying. I don't see that being a reality. Will search change completely into this agent-driven architecture? Yes. What's the timeline for that? One of my biggest learnings over the last 3 years is just how embedded people are in their default G Suite network. So they default to G Suite for everything. Want to take a note, open Google Docs. Want to, create a lead list, open Google Sheets, right? Want to do a search, go to Google, right? This is something that I've done that I've noticed over customer interviews. And my belief is that this is starting to change. People are starting to be like, oh, let's just use ChatGPT, let's use Bing, let's just ask GP, let's use you. Some people are using you.com, right? UChat. So this is changing, which is not a good sign for Google because they had a foothold in behavior itself, which is now starting to erode. So we don't, very difficult to see where this is heading. My belief is that you will have these different models that are able to browse the web. Um, but Google will figure out some way to rival or to stay relevant. Because, I mean, have you used Bing recently?
Mm-hmm.
Bing chat is pretty good, but Bing itself is not that great.
Right.
Like, it's not as relevant as it could be. Um, I use Bing chat quite often, but Bing not so much. I go to Google to search Reddit and Quora. Like literally, if I have a question, I will do the query and then just add Reddit after that. So Reddit is now my source of truth, and I think this is the same for a lot of people. Like people trust subreddits more than they trust like just SEO ranking articles, I believe.
Right.
So Google needs to figure something out. My only concern is that will people be happy with? So imagine this, right? You wanted to contend with a fairly difficult question that is not obvious. The answer is not obvious. Would it be a good thing, or would you be happy, especially if you're more of a like you like to look at all viewpoints or data points, you like to get all the information? Would you be happy to have only a single source of truth that just gives you a block of text as the final answer? Or would you rather discern the final reality for yourself, going through multiple um, answers that were differing to each other? Personally, for me, I would like to evaluate all possible um, outputs and make the final call for myself. For a lot of very deterministic or very low level what do you call it, questions, yes, it makes sense. Like let's say I wanted to know how to edit a video on Final Cut in a particular way with a particular option. Like that's, people know how to do that. I just need to find the correct solution. Sure. But if I wanted to, like, let's say I wanted to figure out some, currently that there's a very big political movement happening in the AI space. One is called accelerationist, the other is a decelerationist. The decelerationist, they want AI that is GPT-4 class and higher to pause developments completely. You have extremists in this space that are calling for nuclear strikes on data centers where they're doing training runs on GPUs for AIs or language models at the scale of GPT-4 or higher. They're recommending nuclear strikes. You have extremists like that, right? So you have like very different viewpoints on the same thing out here. So to make an opinion on this, do I want like one AI just to give me the answer? Or do I want to make that distinction for myself? I don't know how we get to that and the convenience of a single um, answering machine, from lack of a better word. But I feel that Google will find some sort of a solution that gives us the best of both worlds. Um, and I don't think the apocalypse is happening just yet. I think it's going to be a gradual progress, a lot of iterations. The biggest problem with LLMs people have to understand is that it's not a deterministic system. It's going to get things wrong. It's going to hallucinate. And imagine you wanted the recipe for something and it just gives you the wrong ingredient, right? It's a possibility. Bot can do that easily. So there will be times when you will be frustrated by agentic behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, you're like, good, let me just search it myself. Right. So I think there's going to be a balance between what we offload to LLMs and what we do ourselves. And this is going to change for sure as GPT-5 comes out, GPT-6, as long as we don't get nuked. You never know, based on the extremists and like just the lunatics. But I think 6, 7, they'll come out. But my belief is it's not going to get more deterministic. We're going to we are heading towards a cognitive architecture. A cognitive architecture is what, like person, right? AGI, intelligence. And can we really say that another human is deterministic in nature? I don't think we make that claim, right? Like almost every human is a non-deterministic entity. You can't say with certainty what someone will do. I think AI will be in the same category where there will always be an element of uncertainty because it's just modeled after a human, like
Yeah.
after the brain's neural network,
Yeah.
with some caveats, but that's the general idea. And that's another reason people think that prompt engineering is going to go away. I don't think so. I think it's going to get even more important and it's going to get even more sophisticated. What people think is, or rather what they mean, is that the syntax of prompt engineering is going to go away. And like the core prompt, so, humans are also prompt engineered. Can you guess who prompt engineers humans on for a job, for a daily, their job is to prompt engineer humans? Can you
Parents.
guess who that is? Was
Parents.
that
Parents.
parents? But you're not paid for it. There's a profession that gets paid for it.
Okay.
Clinical psychologists, psychotherapists. It's prompt engineering. It's trying to get you to behave in a certain way based on external input. So I don't think prompt engineering is going to go away because we're prompt engineering humans. So how can we say that we won't have to do that for AGI, which is going to be as much human, if not more human? So there's going to be an entire class, an entire profession for psychology, psychotherapists, psychologists for large language models and AI.
Well, this is the, to be continued, right? So like, tell me, like, let's, as we're gonna roll out of this episode, and again, we're gonna have you back. What like, if somebody wants to find out more, if they want to connect, if they want to get on the wait list, what should they do?
So if will links be attached to
Yeah,
this episode? Like,
yeah.
okay, right. So they can find me on my LinkedIn.
Okay.
And they can also find me on Namora.AI is where they can get our waitlist and they can sign up to the waitlist. We are going to be rolling this out hopefully in the next 2 weeks and start to get our initial users onto it, like especially the early backers like you, Brian. And hopefully over a period of about a month or two, we can get something that is very, not very, but at like somewhat stable and robust, where it's not breaking at the end. Like I said, it's a non-deterministic system. It's very difficult to predict what's going to happen, but hopefully we get something that's usable and valuable and useful within about a month, and then scale up the onboarding from like a couple of months down the line, and get as many people on this as possible.
Well, I know we're only like 6 weeks out from like the change in the world, right? It's April 28th, 2023 right now. But while we may just be 6 weeks from the change in the world, it's been a long journey of 7 years or so for you as you've been on this journey, in and out of the pit, finding partners, just being blessed along the way to this point. So, look, my friend, it's an honor to run with you, and I appreciate you for your
Likewise.
wisdom and guidance and education on this. While GPT may be a great tutor, I don't know that it would be as good a teacher as you are on this subject. So I hope you'll come back and we'll talk more about this, because I know that there will be new topics in just a few weeks. So look forward to having you back, my friend.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll try my best to, explain what I know and translate it as best I know from the technical side to the non-technical side, and just focus on what's actually useful and valuable, and just stay out of like the fear and doubt and uncertainty that people are trying to spread.
Yeah.
And hopefully everyone listening to your podcast or not can have a very prosperous life now that we have this technology.
Yeah. Amen. Well, thank you so much. We'll definitely be having you back soon. Well, that's what we got for you today, my friends. This is Brian Q. Davis and Soham Sarkar signing off from the Sales Warrior Podcast, a conversation about how to dominate your marketplace without sacrificing your body, your marriage, your children, or your soul. You can go and find more at thesaleswar.com. There'll be links in the show description. Keep tuning in. Thank you so much. More to come.